Did you see Jerry Seinfeld on The Tonight Show describing artificial intelligence? He said, "We're smart enough to invent AI, dumb enough to need it, and so stupid we can't figure out if we did the right thing." I still crack up at the term of artificial intelligence because, as Jerry says, most of our intelligence is artificial anyway. And there, my friends, is the crux of the brand narrative we created for Tampa-based Green Irony, who turns AI into actual intelligence you can activate to drive smart growth. Hi, I'm Park Howell, and welcome to the Business of Story. Aaron Godby, founder of Green Irony, shows you how the refinement of their brand story guides everything from the talent they hire, to aligning their team with the company's vision and mission, to leveraging a powerful, unique value proposition, to focusing all of their sales and marketing around an incredibly intelligent brand narrative. And how you can too. Green Irony was the last brand we physically took through our story cycle system to develop its brand story. You know, the old-fashioned analog way of time-consuming discovery meetings, research, and brainstorming. I mean, don't get me wrong, it worked wonderfully, but it can be really overwhelming even though the process is extremely effective. Now we've taken our proven story cycle system, which, has grown brands by as much as 600%, and bottled it in you guessed it, an AI agent we call the Story Cycle Genie. Now you can refine your crystal clear brand story in minutes, not months, at a fraction of the cost of the old way of branding, with even more impactful brand story elements that you can operationalize immediately. We're hosting our final beta cohort this month, and we'll be launching the Story Cycle Genie in March. We have a couple of seats left in our beta group if you're interested in refining your brand story right now. You can register at businessofstory.com/storycycle-genie. That's all one word, Story Cycle, then -genie. The link is in the show notes. Essentially, what the Genie does is reviews your website and any marketing materials you feed it, and it takes those data points and turns them into brand story drama, revealing how you are currently showing up in the world based on data from your industry and your competition. Now you can let your brand genius out of the bottle with the Story Cycle Genie to rocket your revenue. Check it out at businessofstory.com/storycycle-genie, because it's all about getting control of your data and turning it into drama intelligently.
And it really speaks to the importance of being able to access your data. That Spirit Airlines approach, right? Let's get control of our data. Let's get control of our systems. Let's get control of the actions that live within those systems to create data. Once you have that in place, AI can be thought of as kind of like a snap-in, as long as you have the right people who understand AI, who understand prompt engineering. And Park, the importance of that from what you've been working on. It's really just, add a product like Agentforce on top of a situation like that, and you can really start to innovate quickly.
Aaron Godby founded Green Irony in 2016 after seeing Salesforce as more than just a CRM, but a SaaS platform that can transform companies, providing, of course, that it's implemented correctly. His journey has taken him through solving large-scale systems integration challenges for brands that include Spirit Airlines, Anheuser-Busch, and Primerica, to now infusing AI into the enterprise using Agentforce as one of Salesforce's leading partner implementers. Here's Aaron Godby with his story of how they turn AI into actual intelligence so you can, do whatever you need to do with your data to accelerate the growth of your enterprise. Good afternoon, Aaron. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Park. Thanks for having me. Good to see you again.
Yeah, good to see you too. We've been doing a lot of work together lately. That's fun. About a year ago, we got introduced and started doing some work with Green Irony and really refining, perfecting your brand story out there in the world. And we'll talk a little bit about that today. But I think first, let's do a little level set. Share with our listeners what is Green Irony and how do you find yourself where you are today? How'd you get into this world of implementation and AI?
Oh, yeah. It's been a long road, Park, as you can imagine. But Green Irony is a Salesforce consulting firm. So we specialize in AI driven by Salesforce. And there's a lot of work that happens behind the scenes to enable AI, which we can talk about more later. My path was interesting. So I have an engineering background. I came out of Virginia Tech, went down to Research Triangle Park in North Carolina to work for IBM. And I worked on big products at IBM. So it'd be teams of hundreds or even thousands of engineers. And you'd work on, a minor piece of that product for, let's call it 2 or 3 years. You'd go through a release cycle. It would go in the field. Maybe somebody would eventually use it, but you didn't really get to see your stuff go into use. So for me, I really like to see the technology solution come to life and start to deliver value. So around 2012, I went into consulting. And if you remember 2012, that was right around the time the iPhone 4 or 5 came out. I can't remember exactly which. And the traffic patterns started to shift from desktop to mobile. So because of this, this was a great shift. It was allowing a lot more people to access the web from any place that they wanted to. And it would be great if you could serve up the right experience. But at the time, all the sites were catered to a desktop experience. So you'd go to, let's say, H.H. Gregg, which was one of our customers, kind of like a Best Buy, and you would pinch zoom your way around the screen. Not a very good experience, especially as traffic patterns were shifting. So our company, Point Source, was built to solve that problem. And our customers would look at it as, okay, we just need a new mobile site. But a lot of the times, most of our work was actually in cracking open these back-end systems and making them work together effectively. And that's what I found at Green Irony too with Salesforce. The bulk of our work is not on the front end of configuring Salesforce, but it's everything that needs to happen behind the scenes for a user to use Salesforce effectively.
And that's kind of where the name Green Irony came from. And when did you launch it? 2016?
That's right.
Yeah. Tell us the backstory on the Green Irony name.
Yeah, sure. So in consulting at Point Source, my very last assignment was a hired gun CIO assignment for a company that had grown really quickly from 10 people to 300 or so. And they were still on the same technology system. So that's how I discovered Salesforce. And I looked at it and I said, with this technology, if I use it correctly, I can do these same types of engagements and deliver value for customers much more quickly, much more efficiently, dollar for dollar than I could before. And what I saw as soon as I entered the Salesforce ecosystem and started, getting my hands on some of these implementations was, implementations that didn't match the vision. So to expand upon that, imagine you're a CEO of a company and you know that if you get the right technology solution like Salesforce, it can have an incredible impact on big ticket business metrics like your OpEx, your revenue growth, business scalability, customer experience, you name it. And if you achieve that vision, everything's going to be great. But then you fast forward a couple of years and your implementation looks nothing like your initial vision because the implementation team didn't take into consideration all of the factors that matter for delivering that outcome. So in the end, you've spent a bunch of money, and more importantly, you've wasted a bunch of time and opportunity cost, and you're kind of in a worse place than where you started before. So that's really, to me, the green irony. You're spending all this money and you're ending up in a situation where you're actually wasting more money than you started with a couple of years prior. And there's not really a way out. There's not a silver bullet that's going to fix this at that point.
It's a death spiral, isn't it?
Absolutely. And the only way to fix it is to roll up your sleeves. There's no, like I said, there's no silver bullet. And one of my favorite quotes comes from a book from Ben Horowitz, who is a founder of A17Z. So he has a book that goes through his trials and tribulations as a startup CEO. And one of my favorite quotes is, Ben, there's no silver bullet for this situation, only lead bullets. And that's the situation that these folks find themselves in. The only way to get out of it is really roll up your sleeves and do a bunch of hard work. But these customers have already done a bunch of hard work over the prior couple of years. It just hasn't amounted to anything, unfortunately.
So you guys come in and you work with them in advance. As you say, in the branding work we did with you, one of your story themes is that Green Irony is outcomes obsessed. So you go in, another one is candor, which I love because you go in and say, tell the truth, whether they like to want to hear it or not. And then that truth is typically how upside down they are in their 2-year-old implementation. And they're probably further from the goal line than they thought they were back 2 years before. And then you guys come in with this outcomes obsessed approach to get them to where they want to be in a few months.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's all about getting the outcome. Like, a lot of times in software and tech, you're sold all these shiny bells and whistles, and you're looking at it and you're saying, yeah, this could be me. But there's more to it than just buying the software, and achieving the outcome that relies upon focusing on some critical factors that can go wrong in these implementations, especially as you're migrating mission critical workflows that handle your revenue, that handle your service, so on and so forth. Migrating those workflows is not a small deal, and there's a lot of considerations that need to go into it.
Yeah. And you from an engineering background, by the way, what kind of engineer were you at IBM? What were you like, soldering things together? Were you writing code? What were you doing?
I was writing code. I've done some soldering as a hobbyist, but I don't think I could make a career out of that. I'm a little sloppy.
So most engineers, certainly being led by that logic, reason-driven left brain, kind of sometimes have a hard time wrapping their head around the right brain side of storytelling. And yet you did that with the very name of your brand, Green Irony. There's a story behind that. And your superhero character. Why don't you go ahead and describe your character?
Oh, Banks. Yes, our
Banks.
flying pig. So a lot of the times when folks find themselves in these binds, like I described, they're looking at it like, this is an impossible situation to get out of. Like, I don't even know where to start. I don't know what's wrong. How do I get back to this initial vision that I had, or something that's even remotely close to it? So what I had somebody tell me one time, yeah, I'm sure you can make this work as soon as you make pigs fly. And this person didn't know
anything. Stuck, obviously.
It sure did. It sure did. And this was somebody that hadn't seen it was just somebody I knew casually. They hadn't seen our logo, didn't know anything about the brand. Our logo is actually an upside down piggy bank to kind of play on the Green Irony name. So as a result of that conversation, we decided to really bring this pig to life. So we created a cartoony pig that's kind of in a similar style to Salesforce's characters. They've got probably a dozen or so now to represent their various pieces of software, these cartoon characters. So we kind of fashioned him in that similar mold, gave him a cape like Superman, and now all of a sudden the pig is flying because we were able to solve that problem.
And let's talk a little bit about that too then. What was your thinking behind, dressing Banks up like the Salesforce cartoons?
Really, I think just brand alignment, right? And they've got kind of a playful brand. You'll go to the conferences and you'll see these cartoon characters as huge, larger than life mascots, and people are posing for pictures and such. So just a way to really, stand out with the brand and also represent something that's really important to us, which is getting people out of these problems and getting value out of their software. That's really why I got into this. It's to solve really difficult problems and collaborate with clients on the right way to solve them, and then get them those outcomes they're looking for.
Yeah, so you are taking your smaller Green Irony brand and just kind of weaving it, melding it into what Salesforce is doing, because you're one of their premier implementers. People will buy Salesforce, and then Salesforce and or the customer will come to you to say, hey, help us get this up and running as quickly as possible so that we don't have green irony in our life. We're not wasting money. You're making money faster than before.
That's right. Because that's not good for anybody. And, one of Salesforce's core values as a company is customer success. And that's one that really speaks to me because as a consultant, I'm winning if you're winning. And if you're not winning, that's a lose lose for everybody. There's no reason
Hmm.
to go and configure these technology solutions and go and make some big shiny object that doesn't move your business forward.
Yeah, and you guys can do overall ERP implementation, right? I mean, it doesn't just have to be Salesforce, but the bulk of your work comes through Salesforce and their new Agentforce products.
Yeah, the bulk of our work is Salesforce, and we do. I alluded to this earlier. A lot of the work's actually on the back end. It's behind the scenes things that as a user, you may not even know is happening. And I'll give you an example of that. So one of our best clients is a major U.S. airline, Spirit Airlines. And a big problem in airlines is that they're on all these very old systems. So you can think for ticketing, for reservations, for loyalty, I could go on and on and on. But the net is there's dozens, or even, in the case of a larger airline like Spirit, hundreds of systems that need to act in coordination in order to accomplish whatever outcome you're expecting as a B2C customer on the website, on the mobile web, or even at the ticketing desk. So as a result of our partnership with Spirit, which started actually during COVID, so in June of 2020, that's when we first started working with them. And their vision really was to make these systems work in harmony. And by doing so, any business initiative they're rolling out with technology on the customer experience side moves 10, 20 times faster to value realization than before, because these systems were really what was blocking them from achieving their outcomes on, with these investments. There's more to it than just going and creating a shiny mobile app. That mobile app needs to be actionable, and those actions require, typically dozens of systems to work in harmony in order to achieve just one action.
Mhm. And these are legacy systems, right? You might bring in one or two new ones, but you've got to be able to embed that into their already operating systems, and they don't always talk very well to each other.
That's exactly right, Park. That's actually the most challenging part of this space that we call digital transformation, which is essentially digitizing old processes into the new digital world. It's that you're not starting with these SaaS systems like Salesforce that are very easy to configure and work with. There's all kinds of heavyweight systems like the ones I used to build at IBM in 2005 that are in there lingering in the background that are very, very important to somebody's business operations. And you need to make sure whatever you are rolling out as your new digital initiative works, not just well with these things, works perfectly. Because if it doesn't work perfectly, you're going to find yourself in a world of trouble.
Were you surprised right there in the heart of COVID, June 2020, that Spirit would take on such a ambitious implementation program where, it seemed like everything around us was falling down around our ears?
Yeah, it was a bit surprising from the get go. I was working with a great partner of mine named JT, and he was working with them from Salesforce's software product called MuleSoft. That is their product that actually connects all these backend systems very well. It enables an implementer like us to do things a lot more quickly than they would have been done in the past, and surface these systems in a really scalable way. And when he told me, "Hey, I might have an opportunity at Spirit Airlines that I think you'd be perfect for," I laughed a bit. I thought he was joking because all the news was talking about how airlines were grounded. There was
Mm-hmm.
pilot layoffs. Everybody remembers those days. But Spirit was very forward looking on the IT side. They saw it as a big opportunity with things paused to really focus on their branding, on their customer experience, and on their digital initiatives. And they were able to accomplish that goal because they started by removing all these hurdles with legacy systems.
Yeah. So now you showed up on my doorstep, well, referred in by a mutual friend of ours, and about a year ago, and you had a robust business going and so forth, and you just said, "Bart, can you help us do a little bit more definition with the brand story?" What was driving that from your point of view?
When we talk to folks, engineering speaks a bit different. There's there's some technical jargon. There's a lot of context, there's a lot of vision. And if you're talking to the right people, they can connect the dots, basically the way that you want them to. But, if you're talking to somebody who doesn't have a technical background, they speak a different language because their backgrounds are different. So what we found was we need to get a lot better at telling the right story instead of just leading with facts like I've kind of done before in this podcast.
You're not alone, man.
Tell the story up front. Put yourself in the shoes of the customer. What do they want? What's their problem? Lead them down that path, show them that vision, and then you can talk about all this stuff around it that actually makes it happen. But let their minds go into the story first and put yourself in their shoes. And that's really what we were looking to accomplish as we started working on the brand and working with you, is just get better at this storytelling and get better at being hyper focused on exactly what Green Irony is about.
Yeah, and we went through the story cycle system, the quote unquote, now I call the old manual way, where we have spent a lot of time together on Zoom calls, and you send me lots of information to go through. And then we look at your competition and look at your business goals and all that stuff. And over the course of a couple months, we kind of expedited your process. We did come up with a story that we all, I think, agreed that it felt like the right direction for Green Irony. And the big ta-da is, if the overarching brand UVP narrative is Green Irony turning AI into actual intelligence, then we can add any clause onto that we like to drive your IT help desks, to drive customer service, to drive revenue, you just attach whatever benefit you want to that. And now we've got a singular core focus of turning AI into actual intelligence that you can actually operationalize.
That's exactly right. And it felt like everything that we had done to that point as a company has really led us to this moment, because without everything that I just talked about with Spirit Airlines in terms of making these legacy systems talk to one another, without having that, AI is just another shiny, disconnected tool. AI, similar to, implementing that mobile app for H.H. Gregg back in 2013, in order for that AI to work appropriately, it needs to be actionable. It needs these systems to work in harmony. Additionally, as the AI ran out of the gate, nobody's going to trust it to go and do the things that a human would do, right? That is very risky. It's not something that anyone who's an expert in the field of AI would recommend. So it's all about the interaction between a human and the AI, and making that as seamless as possible, and enabling that AI to go and take some of the lower value work off of the human's plate. And that's where Salesforce technologies come in, because most of the high value workflows in an organization, one that uses Salesforce, are run on that platform. Sales workflows, service workflows, et cetera. All the ones that impact a customer experience are run on the Salesforce platform. So AI is a natural extension of that platform, and you're essentially making the lives of everybody who's using Salesforce a lot easier by weaving AI into those workflows.
Well, again, you guys launched in 2016, and I know you've been right, at the cutting edge of AI ever since it came out. When did you actually start really working with it and using it in implementation for your customers?
Now it's been a little over 2 years. So we'd heard all the AI hype. It's been on the back burner for a while, like AI is coming, et cetera, right? But for me, it really got real with the launch of ChatGPT. That was the first time that I saw it and then said, okay, this is actually AI. It's not just, pumping a bunch of data in and doing a little machine learning. This is something that appears to be reasoning like a human. It's not actually doing that behind the scenes, but it appears that it is. It's able to write, it's able to be creative, it's able to generate some pretty complex output, and it's very useful. So as soon as we saw that, our first thought was, okay, how do we hook into the API? The API being the way that a computer can essentially hook into ChatGPT without the interface. How do we hook?
By the way, what does API stand for?
It stands for Application Programming Interface.
There we go. Okay, that should be obvious to me, but I don't think I've ever asked that question. Thank you.
Well, it's basically just become its own word at this point. I don't know the last time that I've actually seen it spelled out, to tell you the truth.
Right,
I
right.
might have to go back to my IBM days prior to 2012 to remember the last time I said application programming interface prior to today.
API is a lot easier.
It sure is. So our thought was, how do we leverage this API in a business context in some of our software to go and make the software smarter, to turn AI into actual intelligence, so to speak?
Yeah, and it's been fun to watch just even over the last year, some of the work that you all have been doing. You work in a lot of different industries, and now you're actually bringing your work into higher ed, which I understand is the industry in and of itself is a little bit of a laggard compared to a Spirit Airlines that, jumped in during COVID and so forth. Tell us a little bit about the work you're doing in higher ed.
Yeah, higher ed's been great because around 2020 with the pandemic, everything went digital overnight, and higher ed was not unique to this. It was not isolated from those challenges, rather. So that really spurred a lot of innovation within that vertical, and it's starting to accelerate at a pretty fast pace. So there's a concept in technology called AI leapfrogging. Are you familiar with that part?
No, I'm not.
So it's the thought that with the advent of AI, some of these industries that are pretty far behind with technology can start to leapfrog kind of to the front of the line or to where everybody else is by leveraging AI. And we're starting to see that in higher ed. So as an example, one of our clients is a large 30,000 plus student university in the state of North Carolina, and they came to us with an IT help desk problem. So their IT help desk, 20% or so of the tickets were pretty simple things like, I forgot my password, or I can't log in, or how do I get connected to the student internet? Those types of questions. So you can imagine just they're all of a sudden tying up this expert trained staff on problems like that when they could be solving other more important problems. So enter Salesforce Agentforce. That allows them to solve this, through what Salesforce CEO Mark Benioff is calling digital labor. So hand in hand with the human agent who's working at the support desk, this AI chatbot can go and field these questions in advance. And hopefully then that human agent can then focus on more complex problems that requires, problem solving, human thought, et cetera, and not have to worry about going and, resetting somebody's password.
Which that resetting of the password is interesting because it is kind of a minutia task that needs to get taken care of, but it's still important because that student needs to get that password and they need to have someone very quickly get it to them. It's kind of that old thing. I was looking at that poem, that old poem. I don't know if you know, For Want of a Nail. For want of a nail, the shoe was lost. For want of the shoe, the horse was lost. For want of the horse, the rider was lost. For want of a rider, the battle was lost. For the loss of the battle, the kingdom was lost. So it's the little things that bite us in the ass. And in this case, someone loses their password to get in, but if they don't hear from someone in, a few hours, a day or two, well, that's really horrible customer service. And yet that person they need to hear from has a lot of other, even more important tasks to take care of. So there is that horseshoe nail, and AI has a way to fix that. We could take care of that password thing in a second. And you, from the administrative IT help desk, don't even have to think about it. Doesn't even cross your radar screen, and your customer service for that student is off the charts.
That's exactly right. And that's a perfect anecdote for this. Because, yeah, you can imagine if you're a student and you can't even log in and you have some important stuff to do tomorrow. Let's say it's 10 p.m. and there's not any human agents available. Like, what are you going to do? That's a huge problem for you. Just because it's a, kind of minutia for the agent to actually solve that problem does not mean that the problem's not important to solve for that individual. With something like, or with Agentforce, solving that problem becomes easy. So the chatbot essentially can plug into a knowledge base, which everybody already basically has a knowledge base. It's typically surfaced externally. You can go navigate to it. You can read through the help desk articles. This thing can read through the help desk articles in the blink of an eye, consume all that information, and then interact with the student, having known all that information, and give them intelligent answers to solve their problems. Password reset just
Yeah.
being one of those problems.
Well, in you guys are doing a big presentation coming up, and I've been working with you on that and learned a lot more myself about the higher ed world. They have the largest database of personal information, second only to the government. Is that right?
That's right. It's crazy to think of, isn't it?
So they have this gold mine of data to be able to connect one-on-one with their students, but they haven't really had a way to do that until now.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And it really speaks to the importance of being able to access your data. That Spirit Airlines approach, right? Let's get control of our data, let's get control of our systems, let's get control of the actions that live within those systems to create data. Once you have that in place, AI can be thought of as kind of like a snap in, as long as you have the right people who understand AI, who understand prompt engineering. And Park, the importance of that from what you've been
Oh
working on.
yeah, I've learned. Yeah.
It's really just, yeah, add a product like Agentforce on top of a situation like that, and you can really start to innovate quickly if you have the data.
Yeah. And how long does it take you, like with this big university in North Carolina, how long did it take you from, all right, here's the green light, Green Irony, get after it, to get them up and running where it's really revolutionized, transformed that IT desk?
Yeah. So on the Agentforce side itself, that can be very quick. It's really all of the plumbing, so to speak, that goes into as prereqs for AI. They take a lot of time and design. So, setting up your service workflows, setting up your knowledge base, training your human agents, creating access to your data and access to your actions and systems that are not Salesforce. That's the stuff that's
Mm-hmm.
time consuming for us as an engineering organization. The AI itself, now that we're experts in prompt engineering, can be stood up really quickly. So you could see, you know, go a start to finish line of, let's say, a month or so if you already have the prereqs in place. And if you don't have the prereqs in place, that's okay too. Our approach is really to pick some low hanging fruit, figure out how to configure around that, and then get the AI agent up and running and delivering value really quickly.
And for those of us that don't know what Agent Force is, everyone seems to know what Salesforce is. What is Agent Force? Because it's, I think, a fairly new offering for them, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It just rolled out at the Dreamforce conference. So that's Salesforce's really large conference in San Francisco every year. This year is in September. It's around 100,000 or so people attend, and they showcase all their latest innovations. This was the big one for this year's Dreamforce. So that's when it launched, became generally available in October, and now we're finally starting to see some rollouts. So Agentforce, think of it like ChatGPT, but plugged into your Salesforce environment. So it can be grounded on any data and any workflows that live in your Salesforce environment, such as that knowledge base that I mentioned before, where the higher ed university has an external knowledge base of any of the IT problems that students or faculty may run into. That then grounds the chatbot and allows the chatbot to interact with that knowledge backing it. In addition to that, the chatbot also has access to any of the actions that can be performed in Salesforce. So an action might be, let's go trigger a password reset for this student so that they don't have to talk to a human agent. Or it might be, let's enroll the student in this course because I've fast forwarded a year and Agentforce is now handling more things for me. And now we're tackling course sign up. So really the possibilities are limitless, because you can essentially surface any business action that lives in Salesforce, or you can even surface external actions if you have a tool like MuleSoft, and then you have an environment like Spirit Airlines, where they've invested in surfacing those actions through APIs.
But you, as the customer to Green Irony, you have legacy systems that may not all be talking correctly together, and you're not going to rip them out you've got to get them all working with Salesforce and Agentforce to be able to, and in the higher ed example, to really take advantage of that data for uber customer service.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a combination of the data that allows the chatbot to have an understanding of the human's question that it's interacting with, and then the actions that we've enabled it to take on behalf of the agent.
Yeah. You know what? The analogy to me, as you're telling me about this, Aaron, is it's a nervous system. So you go into like this university and they let you into the nervous system, their nervous system of all this data through all these legacy systems that is driving all this energy and synapses turning on and off to make sure things are going in the right direction. But you guys kind of show up as the surgeon. It says, this is a mess. No wonder this leg's paralyzed, and no wonder you can't see out of this one eye over here. And no wonder you're talking gibberish to this particular audience because it's not connected to the right synapses of the legacy systems and so forth. And now add to that, it's like an Einstein coming in. Oh, by the way, we are now going to give you this brilliant brain that could actually cause more havoc with your data than be successful unless you get it plugged in all the right places.
That's a great analogy. And it's funny you use the nervous system analogy, because that was part of Salesforce's marketing for MuleSoft, either last fiscal year or the one before. I can't remember exactly which, but it was the central nervous system.
They beat me to it, huh?
They did.
Yeah. But that's what really you're doing is you're mimicking the human body, the human, nervous system in this digital realm.
Yeah, that's in a way we are. So it's connecting basically commands from a brain. In this case, the brain can be a human agent, or now it can be AI, to actions. Mm-hmm. So it's saying, go move that arm, go move that leg. Go and
do it quickly.
Do it quickly.
And do it right.
Exactly. And as we get more advanced, it might say go run or go jump.
Yeah. Wow, it's really incredible. And so I just think that overall brand narrative we landed on with Green Irony of turning AI into actual intelligence, I think is just timely with everything we learned in that process, because there is a lot of AI fatigue out there. And I think maybe that fatigue comes from fear in a lot of areas, like, is this going to take over the world? Is it going to eliminate all of us Homo sapiens? Or from that chief technology officer, is it going to out me, demonstrating that I don't really understand everything that's going on here, which is understandable given how fast everything is. I think of the progress of technology at the rate of Moore's law has always been a pretty decent law, but to me it feels like AI has now 10x that process. And I've seen it with our own tool, our own Story Cycle Genie. The more I use it, the smarter it gets, the faster it gets, the more creative it gets. There's no lag in it. And so it's really, really hard to catch up to what's going on. It feels like everyone is still behind, and it's where you guys come in and say, all right, take a deep breath, pump the brakes, we're here, we can get this plugged in and operational for you faster than anybody else.
That's right. And at the end of the day, it's still the same thing that we were after in technology consulting all along, and that's delivering really good business outcomes for our customer. This is just another tool. Yeah. It's a supercharged tool, but it's just another tool in our tool belt for doing so.
Yeah. Well, and it's been fun working with you all too and teaching you our storytelling framework, starting with the and, but, therefore, because of course, as you had mentioned earlier, engineers tend to push back on the woo-woo-ness of storytelling. And you're like, no, it actually works. And like we did a training with your whole team again yesterday, and the analogy again I make there is it's like writing code. Storytelling is nothing but code or an algorithm that you are delivering to a fellow Homo sapien to create the absolute best user experience you possibly can, starting with understanding, creating meaning for them as quickly as possible, connecting them with them emotionally. What do they want? Why is it important to them? But then empathizing with why they don't have it. And therefore, here's the way forward. So it's sort of an if then this kind of structure that we teach with the and, but, therefore, the 5 primal elements, of course, our story cycle system.
It is, and I love that analogy because, after being involved in coding for so long, it makes a lot of sense for me, and it really rings true. It gives me a system for just, in my brain, arranging things the right way so that they can be consumed a lot easier by a client, by a prospect, by anybody really, versus just slinging a bunch of context, which is what us engineers are naturally wired to do.
Well, so again, a year ago, we went through the manual process of applying the story cycle system to your brand, and I think we're all pretty happy with what we came up with. Now we have the story cycle genie, and you and Kevin have had a chance to kind of walk through the development platform with me as we did it, and it's blowing me away because when Sean Schroeder came to me, the guy who said, "Hey, Park, let's turn this into, an AI agent." Back a year and a half ago, I was rather reluctant. I'm like, I don't know. Do I have time for this? Do I really want to get into this? And he taught me a lot, and he taught me about prompt engineering. We spent a year and a half building out the prompt engineering so that any user can go in and you don't have to know any prompts. You just talk to it like you and I would be talking sitting across from each other. What was your sense of our tool? And by the way, you are going to be joining our beta group, even though you've already refined your brand story with the story cycle system. So
That's right.
what's your thinking
Yeah,
there?
that's right. I can't wait to get my hands on it, Park. It's pretty incredible. So I mean, it's almost in a way, it's like having Park sit next to you as you're crafting your brand narrative. And this was a process that we took around a year ago when we first engaged to go through the story cycle system, roll up our sleeves, put in the hard work, share content, enable Park on the brand, and then ultimately come up with these branding pillars, archetypes, etc. And it was a very worthwhile process. Even taking 2 or 3 months, it was very valuable to us. And I felt like it went really quickly until I saw this, and now now I'm seeing it happen in the blink of an eye. It's incredible. Yeah, what you all have built, you should be very proud of. Yeah, it's something that I feel would be useful to anybody who, like me, wants to fine tune their messaging, wants to ensure that anything they release is on brand. Just the utility of it is off the charts. So I can't wait to get my hands on it.
Well, thank you. And that means a lot to me coming from you. And I had shared your sentiments with Sean after we walked through it. And that was the very rough tool. So we're putting the final touches on it. And yeah, this month we're doing our beta test. I'm hoping to get it in your hands tomorrow. And by tomorrow, tomorrow, that would be February 1st. I know this show is happening about a week later, but can't wait to hear how it's working for you. And then, of course, I'm sure we're going to have some hiccups in it. We'll have to clean some things up here and there. And the idea is then we'll launch it for real to the world come March. But you'll have been a very important beta tester for us and give us your take on what's working, what's not working, what can we improve, and that kind of thing. And I know you guys are also building some similar agents for different things for, I think, one of your board members or one of your advisors and so forth. So hopefully this process will help you as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's a really great use case for AI when you have an expert like yourself who has a system that he walks somebody through. Procedural, there's, in your case, it's ABTs, it's story cycle. There's just a lot to it. And if you can train the AI on your knowledge, similar to the knowledge base at the university, right? You're taking your knowledge and allowing the AI to be grounded upon that. You're teaching it your system. It's a really great use case for it because there's only one Park Howell. But if you were to instill that into this AI bot, now it's a lot more accessible to the world. So we're seeing that in a number of different use cases with experts in different areas where they can essentially take all the knowledge that's bottled up in their head, train the AI on that knowledge, and then, get a lot more widespread use of their services.
Yeah, the place that I recently saw, Marshall Goldsmith? He's like one of the top leadership coaches. He's taught all the big dogs out there and
Hmm.
whatever. Well, I believe it was a company out of India came to him and just said, "Hey, we want to take your complete body of work and we're going to create an AI." And they got video of him and everything in his voice. So now you can go to his website and it's totally free. And you can ask Marshall Goldsmith anything. And he's sitting there totally AI generated from all the content over the decades of his work, and he'll give you tips on what to do. That's pretty amazing.
And that's awesome. I hadn't seen that. I'm gonna have to check that out right after this.
Yeah. I think it's right. I think just go to marshallgoldsmith.com. He was on my show about a month ago, and I don't remember the link. I need AI to remind me of my links anymore. I get so many of them in there. But
there's solutions for that too.
Well, Aaron, this has been great. Thanks so much for sharing your story about Green Irony, and thanks for entrusting us over here at the Business of Story to help you refine that story. We're going to have a lot of fun this year as we're now applying the story cycle system and the ABT to your sales. We completely revamped your presentation to higher ed next week. Can't wait to hear how that goes. Melissa Fisher, your HR person, who says she has been using the ABT to great effect with recruiting. And in fact, you guys actually canceled your LinkedIn recruiting. I don't know what you call that platform. Your LinkedIn hiring platform.
LinkedIn Recruiter.
That was costing about $60,000 a year. LinkedIn Recruiter is costing about $60,000 a year. You got rid of that and just using the ABTs. And she said that the quality of candidates have gone up, and that even the candidates are telling you this is like the best job posting I've ever read. So that's pretty cool.
It's been amazing seeing that transformation because, we started just as normal technology posts. Here's an application for a MuleSoft software engineer. Here's why you would want to be in this position. Here's how great we are at Green Irony. That's not the right story to tell, right? So Melissa's really leaned into the ABT. She's leaned into our branding pillars, and now she's telling the story from the perspective of the applicant. And it's really changed the game for our recruiting, to tell you the truth. I'm typically the final interview, and the quality of candidates and just their level of passion for the brand when I talk to them is much different than it was before. So it's kind of night and day just through the power of storytelling.
Well, that's cool. And it's measurable because, so many people push back on branding and brand storytelling, and it's too woo-woo. You can't measure it. It's just smoke and thin air and whatever. But here you can measure it. You're getting better quality of recruit, saving you tens of thousands of dollars from the old way of doing it, and saving you lots of time of not having to go through a bunch of resumes that just aren't even remotely qualified, to now you've got fewer resumes, but the qualifications are through the roof for you. So there's a lot of ROI that you can really ascribe to storytelling and the use of the frameworks.
Exactly. It's incredibly valuable to us because we're selective. We don't want the wrong fits joining our culture. We're high growth, and hiring the wrong fits can be very costly. And in combination with that, since we're high growth, we need to hire a lot. So, to your point, I was wasting a lot of time in interviews with candidates who either weren't cultural fits, weren't passionate about the brand, or maybe even didn't have the skill set. Whereas now, for the most part, anybody that gets to me in an interview is somebody that I'd like to hire. So there's very measurable results in ROI and business impact in that, just from a seemingly small change like our messaging in job posts.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. And I know you're extremely busy, Aaron, so I'm going to let you go and just thank you so much for, again, sharing your story here. People want to learn more about you and Green Irony. It's just simply greenirony.com. Anywhere else you want me to send our listeners?
No, that's it. Thank you, Park.
Okay. And you're on LinkedIn and all that, so they can go out and track you down too if they want to chat with you directly.
Absolutely. I'd love to have the conversation. And this was a lot of fun. Thank you for having me.
Oh, man, my pleasure. And good luck next week with your higher ed presentations. Can't wait to hear how that goes.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Hey, before we go, I wanted to share with you the impact our Story Cycle Genie has had on one of our beta testers. You're going to hear my conversation with John Martinson, who is the co-founder of China Mist Tea. You probably have had a sip or two of his product. He is also the co-founder with Peter Colin of Drive Electric Arizona, the state's #1 nonprofit driving the advancements of the EV industry through education and experiential events. Here's an excerpt from our session I did with them just last week. Good to see you, John.
Good to see you, Park.
Did you guys both get a chance to go through the Genie together?
No, I went through the Genie and all the output I sent to Peter to have him look at. So
Okay, good. So number one, John, how was your experience with it? How'd you like it?
it was amazing.
Tell me about it real quick, if you would.
I've been working with ChatGPT for a while, so I understand how that part of it works, but I was not prepared for how really good it was in the return. One of the other things I found fascinating about it is going through it like that made me think about it differently. Like I thought what I was going to write down was a certain thing. So I started with the first part, and then the second part, I realized that I was missing something valuable from your brand story. Then I went on to number 3, and the output was amazing. So I didn't want to do anything to the number one for fear that it would affect the other two. So
Yep.
I sort of left it the way it was.
Well, and the idea as well is to get you 90% of the way there. It's always going to take the human element to go in and tweak things. And I'm glad to hear that it provoked some thoughts for you about, oh, I hadn't thought about this way, or there's a gap in how we're talking about it. We need to plug that in, because I found that in the use of it as well when I walked a number of other people through it. So I'm glad you had that same experience.
Yeah.
And then, Peter, you didn't have the experience on the Genie, but you saw the output. What did you think of the output?
Well, I didn't really know what to expect, but I was pretty impressed.
Awesome.
It's really great so far, so looking forward to see what the end result is.
If you'd like to join our beta group, this is your last opportunity. Register at businessofstory.com/storycycle-genie. The link is in the show notes. Now, it's one thing to turn AI into actual intelligence, and a whole other thing to nurture a healthy brain to maintain a magnificent mind. Dr. Greg Wells, author of Powerhouse: Elevate Your Energy, Optimize Your Health, and Supercharge Your Performance, joins us on Monday to show you how to maintain brain health to be your best storytelling self. So until then, remember that the most potent story you will ever tell is the story you tell yourself. So make that one epic. Thanks so much for listening.